Welcome back to the virtual learning. And this is the third video on the chapter, the rat trap, right? Since many of you wanted a para to para or line to line explanation, uh, okay, so here I have on my screen the textbook content or the paragraph, and then I'm highlighting as and when I go along with the paragraph, right? Okay, so we are on page number 35. If you happen to have textbook, we are on page 35, and I'm going to continue from the highlighted paragraph. That is third paragraph in your textbook. All right. So before I begin with my explanation today, I would like to recapitulate a bit. So there was a man who goes about selling rat traps that made of wire, right? And when nobody buys, or when he does not have, or when he does not earn any money, he begs. And when people refuse to eat, to help him, he steals. All right. So he has this notion that the entire world is like a rat trap, and people fall prey to the bait in the form of riches, in the form of villages, cities, lands, seas. All right. So he kind of develops extreme happiness, or gets extremely happy when he sees people suffering. The reason why he gets such a feeling, such happy feeling, is because the world or the society has never been kind to him, right? Okay, so one day when he was, one evening, it was quite evening, dark was setting in. So he was on his way, right, walking along the road, and then he came across an you know a small cottage. And when he knocked on the door of the cottage, he was surprised because the door was opened, and there was a like there was not even harsh expression or sore expression on the owner, who is a crofter, right? Or crofter's face. Usually whenever he knocked on people's door, or somebody's house, he was turned away, he was chased away, you know he was showered with abuses, and they showed uh, you know bad expressions. Okay. Yeah. So but when he knocked on the door, the crofter seemed to be, or was a kind-hearted man, because he not only provided the battler with shelter, he also shared his meal. He, shared his tobacco, and they even played a game of card, right, called Majolis, right? And the crofter was so open with the stranger, that he even told, or provided the information about his only source of income, the cow being the source of income. And when the crofter felt that the stranger wasn't believing him, or kind of had this expression of doubt on his face, he got up and showed the 30 kronor to the stranger. All right. So then he later on kept the money back in the pouch. All right. So after spending the night there, they got up early in the morning, right? And they parted their ways. The crofter had to go and milk the cow, and the battler would have to leave the house, because the house did not belong to him. So he had to go on his way, right? And then after half an hour, after thanking the crofter, he left. But after half an hour, he returned back, and without trying to break in the door, he stole the money. All right. So he simply went to the window, broke the window pane, took the pouch, and kept the money in his pocket, and kept the pouch back in its original place, and then he left, right? So as a precautionary measure, the peddler did not walk or did not go on the public road or the main road because he feared that the crofter might have informed the police and the police would come after him. That was his perception. That's what he felt or he feared. All right, so he avoided the public road. Instead of going on the public road, he took the road through the forest, which was quite a thick one. All right, and there he spent the entire day trying to figure out a way out of the forest, but unfortunately, he lost. All right, and by evening, he was dead tired. So he also developed fear because in forest there is danger to his own life, right? Being eaten or being killed by wild animals. So he also grew hopeless. And then when he kept his head on the ground, he heard a sound of thumping. All right. So then he realized that there must be an iron mill and people working in it. So he started walking towards the direction where the sound was coming. All right. Okay. So and Ramshaw ironwork was also like brief introduction was also given on Ramshaw ironwork. Right. So earlier it used to be a popular forge or plant, but it was partially closed. It had only two people working in it. Right. Okay. So during one of the, now I'm going to continue, start my explanation. Let me highlight. Okay, so during one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helpers sat in the dark forge near the furnace waiting for the pig iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. All right, so now, during evening time, so the people working in the forge or in the iron work or iron mill were the master smith, the main blacksmith, and his assistant or his helper. Right? So they were waiting for the pig iron to melt. All right. So the pig iron, the raw iron, had been put in a furnace. All right. And then they were taking in turn, all right, to roll over the pig iron or change its position, right? And so when the iron is hot, it needs to be thumbed or made into designs. All right, so the pig iron after getting heated needs to be put on the anvil. Anvil means it's a kind of a material where iron is kept and beaten about. All right. So every now and then, one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Now, there are two people there, two men there, Master Smith and his helper. All right. So they wouldn't get up together and go to the furnace to turn over the pig iron. Instead of instead of that, they would take turn by turn. uh, okay, and then one of them would be getting up, turn over the pig iron in the fire, and then after some time, after having spent time there turning over the iron, he would return back, but his body would be full of perspiration. Perspiration means uh, uh, if you feel so hot, or if you ran for some time, or if you walked so much, what do you get? Perspiration. All right. So now, what kind of dress were these people wearing, Labaina? Both the men were wearing simply a long shirt, and then they were wearing wooden shoes, probably because it is too hot to be standing or to be working near the furnace. So it is what they wear, right? All right, next paragraph. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge, right? The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. Now, almost throughout the day, right, all the time means almost throughout the day, there are so many sounds to be heard. Being in the forge, being in the plant, or being in the iron mill, one could hear so many sounds. For example, the first one is big animals groaning far away in the forest, right? Burning coal cracks. So the second sound was the crackling sound of the burning coal that is being burnt in the furnace, all right? The third one is the fire boy shoveled, means moved charcoal or threw charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great clatter of a deal of clatter. So the boy, throwing more or adding more charcoal into the furnace, right? And obviously when you throw a stone or a piece of charcoal, it is surely going to make sound, right? So that is the third sound. And outside roared the waterfall. The fourth sound is the sound of waterfall outside the forge, all right? And the sharp north wind whipped the rain against. Now the last sound that could be heard was due to north wind blowing, the rain would not fall directly down onto the earth. Instead it would be beating against, or it would be falling against the brick tiled roof, all right, roof tiled with bricks, all right. Next paragraph. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. Now, it is possible that, because of these so many sounds in mentioned in the previous paragraph, that, the blacksmith, neither the blacksmith nor the helper notice the man or a man or the paddler opening the gate and entering or coming into the forge until he was standing next to or close to the furnace. So because of these sounds, blacksmith or the assistant did not hear any sound of opening of gate and somebody entering into the iron mill until he was standing next to or near to the furnace, all right. Surely it was nothing unusual for a poor vagabond without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes, and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. So it was not an extraordinary thing or something new for such poor people, to have better shelter where there is light, where there is warmth. All right. So how do vagabonds come to such place? Because they are attracted by the glow of the light that escaped or that sipped through the sooty panes, right? Panes of the windows, right? Or panes or between the cracks of the door. And obviously during such night or such dreary nights, they would surely come into such house or such iron mill to warm themselves, all right. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder, right. So blacksmith simply looked at the paddler, right? Simply casually, huh? He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty rat, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. So that's what the rat trap used to have. Like looked by or stared at by such kind of people, because the rat trap seller had like long beard, and he was wearing dirty clothes that are ragged, that are torn, right. And then he also had bunch of rat traps hanging on his chest, right. So he asked permission to stay, and the blacksmith, nodded a haughty consent without honoring, sorry, without honoring him with a single word. So the rat trap seller sought permission to spend, the night there, and the blacksmith simply noted without, bothering to even say a single word. All right, he did not even, like bother to talk to the paddler. All right. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. So the same thing was with Tramp. The reason why Tramp came into the iron mill was to warm himself and have a shelter to sleep. All right, he came there not to talk. All right, so even the tramp or the vagabond did not bother to speak to the master smith. Right. In those days, the Ramshaw iron mill was owned by a very prominent iron master whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. So, in those days, means in earlier times, Ramshaw iron mill, it was owned by by a popular iron master whose only aim is to produce good iron to the market. All right, so that is why he started the Ramshaw iron mill, right, with the aim of producing the best quality of iron. All right, he watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible, and at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. So now that Ramshaw iron work was not so popular, or it was partially done, partially closed, the iron master still used to, visit the iron mill to check on whether the people or the workers are working or not. So he used to come for nightly rounds of inspection. So, inspecting the mill, especially during night times. All right, so such was the moment when it was the time for iron master to come to the iron mill to inspect. Right. Okay, naturally the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. Right, so as soon as the ironmaster entered into the forge, or into the iron mill, he saw a tall man, or ragamuffin means, a person without proper place, with shabby appearance, right? He had seen a tall man standing so close to the furnace, right? Now that, that steam rose from his wet rags. So wet rags means, wet clothes. So if you are wet, or if your clothes are wet and you stand so near to the fire, or something that gives you heat, what comes out of your wet clothes? You see steam, all right, vapor coming out of, all right. So the iron master saw such thing. Right? The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. So ironmaster did not do what the blacksmiths had done. All right. Remember, blacksmith did not bother to talk to the paddler, but ironmaster did talk. All right. He walked up to him, close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his head. Right. So the ironmaster went up near to the paddler, looked carefully at his face, and then he removed the hat that the paddler was wearing, so that he could have a proper view of the paddler's face. All right. But of course, it's you, Nils Olof, he said. How you do look. Now, but of course, it's you, Nils Olof. So there is a sign of recognition from the Iron Master. All right. So, now the Iron Master thought the paddler to be his friend, whose name is Nils Olof. All right. And how you do look, Lena. Look at you. Right? That's what he said. The man with the red traps had never before seen the Iron Master at Ramshaw, and did not even know what his name was. All right. So the man, had never ever seen the Iron Master before. all right, and forget about knowing his name. He hadn't seen him. He was seeing the ironmaster for the first time in his life in the forge, all right. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman here refers to ironmaster, right, thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once, right? Now here, the peddler did not try to rectify the, mistaken identity. He let the ironmaster believe that he is Niels Olof, an old friend of the ironmaster, right? Because he thought that if he told what you say, the ironmaster, that he about the truth of himself not being Niels Olof, then you know he might not get any help from the master, right? So he thought that he might benefit some money, financial support from the iron master. So that's why he did not tell the truth about the mistaken identity, all right. Okay. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. Now, who replied? The battler said, yes, that means he is kind of pretending to be Niels Olof, all right, the old friend of Ironmaster. So he says that only God knows how, he had been unsuccessful in his life, how things started, not being favorable with him, all right, or he was down on luck, right? You should not have resigned from the regiment. Regiment means it's a unit in army, right? Said the Iron Master. That was the mistake. So now we come to know that Niels Olof and Iron Master were, together in the army. So that's how they are known to each other. But Iron Master did not know that the man there was not Niels Olof. All right. So he is still under the illusion, or still under belief that the man was indeed Niels Olof, right? So now Iron Master says you should not have resigned from the regiment, right? It is because of his resignation from the army that he has faced such difficulty in his life and the present condition of the man, all right? That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time, it never would have happened, right? So the Iron Master, what he wants to say here is, during Niels Olof's resignation from the army, if Iron Master had been still in the army, serving army, he wouldn't allowed Niels Olof to resign. All right. Okay. So, well, now of course you will come home with me. Now, this is the invitation inviting the peddler to the ironmaster's house, all right, to go along up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade. That however did not please the tramp. So the tramp was quite clever enough. He immediately thought that accepting the invitation of the iron master to his house would be a troublesome for him, so he wasn't happy about the invitation, right? Now, why do you think he wasn't happy? Instead, he should be happy, isn't it? He should be cheerful because somebody invites him, right, to his house, but he wasn't happy, did not make him happy, right? So obviously there must be a reason, right? Okay, now there are some questions, right? Okay, now I'll continue with the explanation. These questions can be discussed when we have online classes through Gmeet, Google Meet, right? Okay, so no, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed, right? So who responded? The paddler responded. He said that he couldn't even imagine, he couldn't even think of accepting the invitation. So he was kind of alarmed, kind of fearful, all right? He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. Right? So the reason why he denied or he refused the invitation was because of the 30 kroner that he had stolen from the crofter. So that made him fearful. If he accepted the invitation, he might get caught. All right. So, because the man was not an ordinary man but an ex army, all right? So, he only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forest and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. So, what the battler really wanted was to, get a shelter to sleep, right? And leave the place as and when he wanted without anybody noticing him. That's the only thing that he wanted. So if he accepted the Iron Master's invitation, then some formalities need to be done or to be, done, right? Okay, so the Iron Master assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing, right? So the Iron Master on the other side thought that or assumed that the man was not accepting his invitation because he was feeling kind of weird or he was feeling shy because of his terrible clothing, pitiful clothing, the rags, right? Okay, so hold on. Okay, please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there, he said. Elizabeth is dead, and as you may have heard, right? So, now the Iron Master is trying to, feel make the battler feel at ease, all right? So don't imagine that I have like big house, a proper house, uh, for you not to be able to show yourself means not able to come into my house, right? Elizabeth is supposed to be the name of Iron Master's wife, so she is dead, as you may already have heard. Now that's what happens when you are close with someone and you tend to get the news from news about the family or news about the friends from other people, right? So my boys are abroad. That means he has more than two boys. We do not know how many boys the Iron Master has, all right? But they are abroad and there's no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. So who lives in Iron Master's house? Himself and his eldest or oldest daughter, all right? We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas. Now, this line reflects how lonely Iron Master and his daughter feel, especially during the occasion of Christmas, because they did not have any company, any other people to celebrate the Christmas together, right? Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. So here, uh, you know, uh-huh, uh, uh-huh, hold on. Here now, the Iron Master adds a humor, all right? Inviting the battler to their home will help the father and daughter to finish the Christmas food, the special food made during Christmas, bit faster. All right, but the stranger said no and no and again no, and the Iron Master saw that he must give in. So the stranger kept on refusing the invitation, and Iron Master realized that now it is of no use because the man is not going to accept his invitation. It looks as though Captain Von Stahl preferred to stay with you tonight, St. John Storm, he said to the master blacksmith and turned on his heel. So before the iron master leaves the iron mill, right, he turned to the blacksmith. So he adds another humor there, all right. So Captain Von Stahl is a name of a popular army, like what do you call personal, right? So he jokingly, calls the battler Captain Von Stahl. All right. So he says that, he doesn't want to, or he isn't accepting my invitation to my house because he wants to spend the night with you. So he started leaving the or he started leaving the iron mill, or he went on his way. All right, but he laughed to himself as he went away. And the blacksmith who knew him understood very well that he had not said his last word. Now blacksmith might have worked under the iron master for so many years that he knew what the iron master was thinking. All right, so even without saying the last word, the blacksmith somehow understood what the ironmaster wanted to say. All right. Okay, so I'll stop here. We'll continue from the next chapter. We'll continue in the next video session. Till then, take care and be safe.